I want us to go through this more than once. If you object to something or think something should be added or said a different way, say so. So some of this, there are essentially comments, and then there's sometimes recommendations. What I did was I combined the discussion of the first two presentations, the census update and the systems update, partly because the things I got from people kind of combined the two, and there wasn't any easy way that I saw to separate it out, and I didn't think that caused any major problem. That all sound all right? And for the things today, Jeff just sent me his. The others, I sort of summarized what I got from the presentations, and the individual presenters said it was okay. On the comments here, a lot of it is from what people sent me yesterday. Some of it is what I thought, and some of which comments other people made to me. So does that all sound all right for us to go ahead? And I tried to be both polite to the Census Bureau, but also clear when we had stuff to say, so it was not ambiguous. So here, if we can start, this is the things for the first two things together, and if you could kind of read and say when I can go on to more.
Barbara, excuse me. We don't have that on our screens, right? We just.
You have it right up there.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything else I can do.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I suppose someone could read them aloud.
Well, I could read it aloud. Sure, I'll read aloud. This is on the first two together. There were two interesting, timely, and interrelated presentations on the current situation in 2020 census planning. We will discuss them together. And I bullet pointed most of this. One, CSAC appreciates the update on the 2020 census planning. Although we were, I guess I should capitalize census. Although we were reassured by much of the presentation, we are concerned that budgetary uncertainties could have implications for the success of the 2020 census. Many of the innovations undertaken for 2020 seem to be motivated by reducing the costs compared to 2010, but we hope the Census Bureau will better articulate a more complete set of success metrics. We are especially interested in the metrics of accuracy, overcount and undercount, and attitudes toward the Census Bureau. For example, will self-response increase the overcount, and among which population subgroups? How might various decisions, collecting email addresses in online form, using IRS records, and impact attitudes toward the census? That's number one. Okay. Number two.
Maybe add an EG within the parentheses.
For here, e.g. collecting?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay? Right? Oh, this is great. Two, we want to emphasize the importance of the internet self-response. It will be the way most Americans interact with the 2020 census. Although we could tell that improvements to the user experience had been made since the presentation about Primus, the online interface has a clunky, outdated look that is not very user-friendly. It clearly needs a great deal of further work. We hope that the standard for evaluating the success of internet self-response will be not only a high response rate, but also accurate responses and a positive user experience. It is not sufficient to follow a list of recommendations. It requires an expert that is actively involved researching and designing. The final version of the internet self-response interface would be much improved by committing to user-centric design, forgetting my articles, a user-centric design process.
You could probably even just delete that dash. It requires an expert, but that's like a.
Make it a new sentence.
Yeah, metal sentence there.
Okay,
Just start the final version.
is that okay? What?
Yeah, and just cut that sentence. It requires an expert. Because because that, the user-centric design process kind of implies that.
I can get rid of this sentence?
I think so.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and it would be user-centered. That would be the appropriate.
Okay.
It's almost the same, but.
Okay? Specifically, progress will continue to be slow unless the frequency of usability tests is increased. Other types of user-centered activities like contextual inquiry sessions are employed and crowdsourced usability tests are employed. Census should look at other online surveys and try to match their quality. And as you'll see, there's a recommendation I'm suggesting at the end which builds on this.
Unless the crowdsourced usability tests are, okay. And are you gonna say graphic designers someplace?
Where do you want me to put it here? They could use the advice of a graphic designer?
That they should be part of a team, yeah.
Yeah.
They should be part of a team.
Tommy Wright, I'm sorry to interrupt, but please continue to use your name when speaking. Thank you.
This is Kathy Pettit. Do we have, or the experts in the room have an example of other online survey interfaces? Because I feel like I see bad ones as often as good ones. So I don't know, telling them to look at other ones might not. Or some pointing to some best practice place.
So,
This is Barbara. Why don't people rack their brains while we continue, unless you have something.
so this Sunshine, I would say participation of a graphic designer and survey design and survey design.
The interface design?
So they could use the participation of a graphic designer and survey expert in the design. Just because later on, if it still makes it in here, some of the internal people that
Okay.
I'm hoping are participating are not
This is
graphic
also why we
designers.
want to go through this more than once, so you can iteratively correct everything I've done wrong. Census should look at other online, blah, blah, blah. 3, we would like to know whether the self-response instrument allows individuals to indicate that more than one person owns a home when the home is owned.
It does.
4, what?
It does,
Oh, it does?
yeah.
Okay, so we can wipe that out. We do know.
Barbara, would you please read that again before you wipe it out? Because it might pertain to something else with a slight change of,
We would like to know whether the self-response instrument allows individuals to indicate that more than one person owns a home when the home is owned. Can get rid of it? Okay. We don't want to say unnecessary and untrue things. Have there been tests to assure that very high usage will not crash the system at the time of the census? We are interested in what measures are being taken to protect against sophisticated cyber attacks. 4, if the race ethnicity question is changed to a single question which allows the respondent to indicate their race and related nationality/subcategories, the related nationality/subcategories appearing on a separate later screen could negatively affect the results that have been improved by combining the race ethnicity questions into one. Specifically, it's possible the proximity of the subcategories could help the user to understand the definition of each category. Consider the possibility of allowing that question to continue past the fold so that users see the category and subcategories together, as they do on the paper version, end. 5, there was an impressive list of test systems and support systems.
Sunshine, Hilligus. Just
Okay.
one thing on that one. This is, again, I kind of got the sense last time when we gave a kind of checklist of like, here are some things that we saw, that they address some of those very specific things, but it misses out on the broader point, that this is maybe, and I mean, I don't know if this is part of your intent, but this is one possibility. But truthfully, what needs to happen is a graphic designer and survey expert needs to test this and actually look to see how the presentation is best and how it affects the results.
Well, where do you want that put?
So I think you could just add a sentence at the very end of that that says.
Which number?
Number 4.
Okay. Okay, what do I say?
More generally, this just highlights an issue that needs to be researched to identify the best presentation or something like that.
Juan Pablo,
Yeah?
Oscar over here. So I think the more general recommendation also, and I think that's what you're getting at, is there's a need to explore multiple options sometimes. I think that by and large, my understanding is the usability testing that's been done has been with whatever the current version is, but not looking at, well, what happens if we do it this way? What happens if we do it that way? And I think there's going to be a need to do some of that. One way to do that in an inexpensive way is to look at the crowdsource options for usability testing, which you can quickly test out different options.
I skipped to the recommendations I was suggesting, because this may be helpful.
Yeah.
And if we think through all this, because I think it relates to some of these issues people are bringing up. So what I was suggesting from what I heard and what people wrote me, that there be a recommendation, one, the working group on sensor user experience could assist with the usability testing as well as with communications and outreach. And a second recommendation, CSAC would appreciate receiving frequent updates, such as every 3 months, about the status of the user interface. It was expressed by several people, or indicated by several people, or that getting back to this group, well, since there was some improvement from the Primus presentation, but not enormous improvement, there was interest in tracking the progress as it went along.
Maybe we could say about the activities related to the development of the user interface as opposed to this, just the status, which is
Okay,
done. Could just be done.
about the status.
About the activity, status and activities
Okay,
related to the development of the user interface? Because it seems like what the concerns were about process, not just about a box was checked.
sorry. Does that all help on the recommendation part?
Josh Patterson here.
Yeah?
One recommendation could be that the members of the user experience working group have some type of access to the code repo or however they're developing this, so they can make active feedback. Because I think that's really where Sunshine is going with this, correct?
What should it say? And do you think there's a chance that we'll get it?
Right, that's, I mean, this is the thing. is-
I don't think there's any way we're going to get that.
So, I mean, and this is, we asked for the working group last time, and the responses we're exploring.
Yeah.
And again, like, we want to be helpful, so maybe it wasn't helpful because there was such a time crunch, and so there was no way adding one more set of people into the mix was.
I may
was
be
useful,
wrong, but I think this is potentially doable. I think what you were saying would be helpful, but I don't think there's any chance.
Barbara?
That's perfectly fine.
Yeah?
Well, I think this is a critical issue for the census to get this right. So I don't think we should expect that they won't get to us. We should expect that they will get to us. And that take that sort of attitude that, look, just assume it's going to happen, or that it needs to happen. I mean, if this is critical, right? I also think some of those points above were sort of like recommendations, like number 4, where you were saying that they should redesign that user interface of that one question, is sort of like a recommendation. So in some ways, these are comments, but some of them also, like number 4, seems a bit of a recommendation. We could move that to the race ethnicity recommendations. That's specific because I also indicated that they need to redesign that interface for that race ethnicity question.
So what do you want moved?
This is Sunshine. The only thing I would say about it as a recommendation is that, in fact, ultimately, the recommendation is, I think, that it needs to be evaluated and redesigned. And so if we're going to make it a recommendation, I think it needs to be generic enough rather, I mean, I think there's a series of issues that we're identifying,
okay.
right? But in terms of making a very explicit recommendation, our recommendation is you fix these issues, but we don't necessarily know what the solution is. The solution is we're here to help if we can be useful in figuring out the solution. We're just identifying the issues.
So should we add something more generic as a third recommendation?
Well, is that user group established or not?
I don't think so.
Well, maybe then we should recommend that it would be critical to establish this user
Okay.
group as soon as possible, like yesterday. Right? I mean, if we're referring to a user group that doesn't exist.
So one possibility might be, number one, we recommend a concerted effort at redesigning the interface, the self-complete interface. Two, we recommend a working group be created to assist with that. So that we have a very explicit recommendation that, above we have a series of
So give me
problems.
language for the first recommendation. Sunshine.
The CSAC strongly recommends a redesign.
It's almost, so this is Juan Pablo, a change in the way the process of designing the user interface has been, well, that didn't result in a complete sentence, sorry, but,
What
based on
should it say
that
instead?
relying on a user-centered process. Okay, because then we get the process.
Is that right?
Instead of user interface, I would say the internet self-response option.
Okay. Is that okay? And then is the rest of that okay, that elaborates a little more? Okay?
This is Juan Pablo.
Yes.
For number 3, I would change usability testing to user-centered design. It's just broader.
Sure.
And do we want to combine, I mean, so do we need to separate user experience from, I mean, and this is the, view of the committee or not. My sense is that the creation of one committee working group wouldn't stretch us too thin, and that committee could deal with both the interface.
I think this is fine.
But we don't, so 2 and 3 are the same thing, though.
But if there's not one, I think 2 needs to say we think there should be one.
Oh, gotcha,
Yeah,
gotcha,
because it doesn't exist now.
gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Okay?
And this is,
Yes? Turn on your microphone.
sorry. For number 4, I think we're moving in that direction. This is Juan Pablo. But I would like to add something about planned activities. So we're now reacting to what's already been done, but we're helping plan what's coming up.
How's that?
Yeah.
So why don't I go back to the numbered points? Is that all right? I think we're on 5. There was an impressive list of test systems and support systems presented. And I'll say this, the census has paid attention to everything we've said to them, so it's not that they're going to ignore what we say.
Barbara-
Prioritization of the importance of these would be helpful, especially which are most urgent for future decisions made by census. Where can CSAC be most helpful?
I just wonder if it would be useful to put all together all of the items that were about the interface, or I don't know if you had cut those or if they're just in a separate location, but the race recommendation, the race issue was about the online self-response. And then later on, there's a whole bunch of things about the online
Second.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, sometimes you're talking about like doing something like talk about design, talk about content questions, talk about the technology questions that are in here, grouping them in order.
Just a matter of grouping them together. In the document I'd sent you, I just had those bullets that were kind of the sub. Here are some of the issues that we identified. And so I think grouping them together.
Could we do that on our second pass? Because I'm concerned about enough time getting through
Okay,
everything.
actually, I would like to keep redesign the race question under the recommendations under race ethnicity, because I want the people who actually are
Okay.
Nicholas and Michael to be involved in that redesign.
Can we keep going? Is that all right? I keep on looking at the clock. Okay. Six, what are the provisions made for the visually impaired to fill out the internet questionnaire? Are there protocols for accessibility that must be observed, or are all those with visual impairments expected to use an alternative means of completing the census? 7, is the IP address of the computer of any value in helping to determine the location of someone filling out the census? Sorry. Online, could this possibly help as a check on the accuracy of the address field? 8, is it common practice to ask for an email address on census surveys? Does this require additional protocols regarding privacy or discourage completion? Perhaps it could be split tested in the 2018 end-to-end test. 9, we would like to know how the frequency asked questions in the census operator interface are developed and vetted. 10, this presentation addressed the use of simulations to ascertain Census 2020 system readiness. This is an important approach that needs to be done carefully. Simulations need to express the observing system as realistically as possible. Presumably, there will be a geographic component, both physical geography and more generally network-defined geography, a temporal component, and of course there's a household component that implies correlation between individuals in the same strong correlation household and in nearby less strong correlation households. Systems can fail when the underlying state moves into new regimes. A good simulation experiment uses random variation to capture some of this. CSAC suggests that the random variables be simulated to reflect the sort of variability seen in the field. In that case, normal distributions should not be the distributions of first choice. Long-tail distributions, e.g. extreme value distributions, should be considered where appropriate. We suggest that the resulting simulation be considered a best-case scenario. Then, based on the simulated data, the analysis should stress test the system in as many ways as possible, including the possibility of malicious attacks from third parties. 11, we would like to know the process for developing the language on the internet self-response form around homelessness. Are we okay, or sort of okay? Okay. And that's the recommendation we just talked about. Now, technical research on adaptive design.
Barbara, a question. There were two of those, Andrew Samwick, sorry. Over.
Sorry?
There were two of those questions that had to do with cyber attacks,
Yes.
right? That long one, and then there was an earlier one. So
But I think they're kind of different aspects of it.
that there were two
Yeah.
suggests that maybe there needs to be a recommendation, right? We should ask them to do something specific on a future agenda of ours to talk about it.
So recommendation, we would like to hear about the planning to guard against cyber attacks.
Or somebody else's better language than what I just sort of spun out.
I don't know if this is better language, but specifics about the testing against possible cyber attacks. Not just what they plan to do, presumably they're currently running those simulations.
This is Juan Pablo, and something to add to that, I would say is, Attacks that are not necessarily on the system, but on the credibility of the process? Through social media and the like?
I doubt they're going to do that. I don't know.
What's that?
Are you planning to look at social media for attacks on the credibility on the census?
Oh, yeah,
Oh, okay.
definitely.
You're doing it, okay, you're doing
Yeah,
it.
no, well, that's in the plan. I mean,
Okay.
in other media, I mean, we're hugely worried about a big disinformation campaign trying to dissuade certain population groups from responding.
Okay, sorry.
This is Kathy. It seems like those should be two different recommendations. Cyber attacks is somebody actually attacking the system versus the disinformation campaign. So it's, I would think it would be different people.
But couldn't we ask about them in the same recommendation?
Okay.
Is that okay? I agree they're different, but is that all right now? Are we sort of happy? I want everybody to be happy. Okay? Yes?
Willie Hassel, I did not worry about this yesterday, but all of a sudden, are we putting ideas in people's heads? Might it be better
I
to
think
say
the
nothing?
Russians and other people will think about this on their own.
I don't think we would want to ask them to give a detailed plan broadcast to the world about what they're doing about it, but
We want to know something. Okay? Technical research on adaptive design. This is creative, exciting work with substantial spillover benefits. It emphasizes the importance of human factors in design. However, there are several important issues. One, there is a need to engage with field representatives to better implement adaptive design as a part of participatory design. For this to work, the incentives to arrow compensation model needs to change from the perspective of the field representative. Given government constraints on incentive policies, verification of quality needs to be part of compensation. Two, there are concerns about appropriateness for certain surveys. How do you determine which type of surveys would benefit the most? Three, given that we have to weight data, what is the preferred balance between adaptive design and weighting? The census should look retrospectively at the biases created when using, I went down farther than I wanted to. Created when using adaptive design. By changing the contact approach, you change the characteristics of the population that responds. Although it is a good idea to look at survey data as they come in, adaptive design cannot guarantee cost savings. The examples where the R statistic was improved seem to result from less overrepresentation of some groups rather than better representation of underrepresented groups. What is gained in this as opposed to weighting? Four, when both representativeness and likeliness to respond are considered, those members of underrepresented groups with a high likelihood to respond will be pursued. Those who are likely and less likely to respond within a group are almost certainly different. This approach could lead to coming closer to targets, such as by race and ethnicity, but could result in less representative samples within each group. Five, there should be clear documentation for users of the data product on the methodology, including data snapshot/methodology. Period. They should study methodology for storing metadata in order to share with users. Given the costs of SAS, the adaptive design group should consider moving toward open source alternatives. This could allow quicker development and easier identification of bugs. Did I get that right, Juan Pablo?
This came from Josh. I think he
Or
also
Josh.
wanted to make a point about open sourcing the code.
Right, I think we mix open source in two ways. There's open source technologies, and then there's open source as in the actual code itself. And so both are 2 points, but they've been smashed together into one.
What do you want it to say?
open source technologies,
Are we rewriting 6 or are we adding a new point?
rewriting 6.
Okay.
Just for the last sentence of 6, open sourcing code. This should be open sourcing the analysis code.
Where, tell me what to write.
Open sourcing the analysis code, and then delete this.
Now what do I delete? Oh, okay, right. Is that okay now?
Do you want to give them a specific example of what packages to consider?
I think that would be in the recommendations.
Okay, what do we say in the recommendations? Because I wrote what I wrote, but I didn't really get any actual recommendations.
Do a cost study of continuing to use SAS and other closed source products versus moving to an open source ecosystem.
Say that again.
Do a cost study of continuing to use closed source products versus moving to an open source ecosystem.
And Josh, number 6, when you're saying the adaptive design group should consider moving to open source, you're really thinking beyond the adaptive design group, right? So the Census Bureau should, in general.
Right, so the research community analyzes census data one way and census analyzes data another way. One side shares how they do it, the other side doesn't share as much. They should open source their code, assuming that their code is good, and which I'm sure it is.
What do you want this to say?
Oh, for the second recommendation, how the code that they use in this methodology should also be open source so people can understand how they do this type of adaptive design.
Tommy, right. Point of information, that dichotomy exists also inside the Bureau. The production area uses SAS, the researchers use R. New graduates come to. Yes, so let's go, yeah, but, yes.
Okay, is that all right now? Okay, yes?
If I can anticipate part of the response and then get you to take your recommendation in the direction that that would imply, or not, compared to what? So adaptive design modifies the way in which people are contacted according to a protocol that's exposed, but all field work modifies the ways in which people are contacted according to protocols that are or are not easy to expose. So controlling the R index is only one of the objectives that you can use adaptive design to control. You could also use it to control the expected mean squared error or other things. And so I expect that we would respond that the methodology doesn't say which are the right objectives or necessarily the right instruments for the adaptation and the control, but the methodology enables the selection of objectives and instruments to meet those controls. So if you can take your recommendation to the point of what you think are appropriate objectives for an adaptive design, possibly none, then that is something that we would like to hear too, and appropriate control variables in the language of economics, instruments in the language of other social sciences that could be implemented inside the adaptive control. I think that would be extremely useful from our point of view.
What do you want to say?
So I think that's addressing a different issue on the methodology of how this is actually done. I was addressing the methodology, whatever methodology, should be open source so people can essentially know what's happening. So if they want to do something similar, that body of knowledge is shared. I personally believe that all census analytical processes should be open source so the academic community doesn't have to replicate them.
How's that? Okay,
Barbara, this is Babs.
yes?
You could add the word comparative in front of the word methodology there to make it clear that what we're asking for is the open sourcing the analysis, not the interface itself.
Develops
No.
for analysis?
In front of the word methodology, add comparative.
I'm not sure that makes clear what you mean. That's why I was going to
Oh,
write
okay.
for analysis.
Okay.
Okay?
Barbara,
Yes?
in number 5 above there,
Yes?
second sentence, I'm not sure who "they" refers to,
The Census Bureau.
okay?
Sorry. I'm just going to have us keep on going rather than breaking to try to actually get this done, okay? You folks are great. Algorithms for including administrative, not data, okay? I'm not perfect, I know that very well. To address NRFU efforts. There is an interesting presentation on research on administrative data. Most of the research's technical core was on estimates of probabilities from a multinomial distribution. 1, more recognition of the variances and covariances of the estimates could be incorporated into the research.
It was editing your multinomial, there's an extra N at the end, should be removed before the A.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. More recognition of the variances and covariances of the estimates could be incorporated into the research. For example, the Euclidean distance could become a standardized distance, often called a walled statistic. Also, the results are usually visualized on a simplex, an equilateral triangle, rather than a right-angled triangle. Finally, the covariates have errors in them, and the attempt to smooth them out is one way to go. The other possibility is to fit an errors in variable model. The two approaches might be compared in a small simulation experiment. We would like to reinforce the urgency to collect and use state-specific data sets that will be useful in determining vacant, non-existent, and occupied addresses in NRFU, as well as in determining the specific characteristics of individuals and households. Key examples include utility records, driver's licenses, birth records, death records, state identification cards, and Medicaid files. 3, we suggest the census rather than you. Focus data collection and use for administrative records research in key states that are both large and where accounts are likely to affect representation, e.g. California, Texas, Florida, New York, Illinois, New Jersey, Arizona. Moreover, the statistical algorithm doesn't have to be one size fits all for the nation as a whole. It could and perhaps should vary across states based on the available data in each. 4, how is the cutoff drawn in the administrative records research? Can it potentially be more effective excuse me, if it varies across states? 5, we urge a data content comparison, e.g. age, sex, race, ethnicity, household relationships, housing, between administrative record predictions for occupied households and fieldwork at those same households. This exercise would compare actual cases that are estimated using AR versus data collected from actual household respondents at the same address. If you find a typo in a name, you can't go back and change it once you move to demographics. And then this next bunch, I got these very late, so I didn't have time to sort of stick it in. Okay. What? I can't hear.
I think those last things, plus number 6, all have to do with the internet response, not with administrative records.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I go back and stick these, what? I can't hear you. turn on your,
Maybe things Sunshine identified when she was trying to go through the questionnaire online.
so do we need to put them up with internet response, or do they need to be in here, or what?
Yes, they would belong with the internet response where we had it above.
Including number 6 that you don't have highlighted yet.
Oh, including number 6.
Oh, okay, okay,
Oh, yeah.
okay. I'll put those up there, and then we're going to have to go back and fix that.
Just put them in as examples of some of the problems, I think.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, where does these go under?
This is Juan Pablo, so maybe just list them as examples of issues, but I don't think we want the process to be the focus, not the specific examples.
Is that okay now?
Yeah.
Okay? Okay. I'll go on down.
Barbara, back
Yes?
on the top of the administrative, this is Bob, back
Yeah.
on the top of the administrative records, there was a couple of sentences. I don't think the second sentence in that lead-in was accurate.
Where?
At
Up
the
here?
top of the administrative records section.
Oh, sorry. What do you want me to change?
That sentence, most of the research is technical core,
I can just get rid of that?
delete that sentence. I don't
Okay.
think that's what the paper was.
Okay. Okay? So we can keep on going? And I want us to have time to do it a second time through all this. That's what I'm trying for, at least. Okay.
And Barbara, this is Bob again. I think on a recommendation, I would like to make a recommendation that the Administrative Records Research Group focus on collecting and using state data that we outline in number 2, I forget what number up above. Numbers 1 and 2, I think that's the big issue. That's, you can have the best algorithm in the world, but if you don't have good data, it's not going to help a whole lot.
How's that?
Fine.
Except I have a typo, I'll fix that.
This is Allison, I'd take out the word level there, just state data.
Okay, second,
Barbara?
second. Yes?
Yeah, it's Noel here, Noel Cressy. I saw in the Census Bureau response to our fall meeting, there was talk about...
A little louder if you could.
Sorry, yeah, I'll just move it closer. So perhaps this has come up and I've sort of missed it in the noise, but have we recommended, or will we recommend that a working group, an actual working group be established?
On administrative records?
Yes, because it's here in the last item.
That we recommended it?
No, that it's being mooted. Let me see if I can. Census Bureau, no, here we go. We should have, yes, 8.3. We should have a working group on administrative data. This would include non-response follow-up and in-house address canvassing. Very last page of recommendations. Census Bureau response. Census Bureau is in agreement with this recommendation and looks forward to working with the committee to establish this working group.
Well, maybe we should recommend it again since it hasn't happened yet.
Absolutely. Otherwise, it'll drop off the radar screen.
We strongly.
Yeah. I think they've come back and said, you bet. And now it's up to us to say, righto, or good on you.
Tommy, right. The Census Bureau's response to that was, we agree.
But it doesn't exist yet. So is that okay?
Yes, I was just translating into
Thank you.
Australian. Thank you.
So what are there any other recommendations we want under this, or does this take care of?
Maybe on the recommendation, you could say as noted by, as in agreement with, or something that acknowledges that they did answer last time, because it's. Should, yeah, whatever the language is. Because I think it was basically on in our lap, right?
No, we don't form them, we get authorization. How's that? Okay.
This is Andrew Samwick. Tommy, what exactly has to happen next for that working group to form?
I'm going to yield to Tara.
Tara knows everything.
She does.
Good afternoon, Tara Dunlop Jackson, and she tries. For the working group, to form the next working group for administrative records, we'll reach out to Barbara and ask if she is aware of anyone that would like to serve as a convener. Once she identifies a convener, we will work with the subject matter experts to develop a set of working group guidelines or a charter for the working group. At the first meeting of the working group, we will share the draft guidelines. The members will discuss it with the SMEs, the subject matter experts on the line. Once the charter working group guidelines are finalized, optimally, the working group will set a series of dates, that the working group would like to meet. Optimally, it would be once a month, once every 2 months. And the charter will have the beginning date, the end date, and what are the deliverables for the working group.
So I think this means that if you're not getting term limited out, and if you're interested in this, email me. How does that sound? And I think you can do it even if you're up for reappointment under the assumption or the hope that you'll be reappointed, because I don't know. I don't think we can take out of consideration everybody who has served one term and might or might not get reappointed. But if you're interested, let me know. Thank you, Tara. As always, Tara is helpful. We miss Sarah, but Tara is wonderful. Okay, edit reduction research. I didn't bullet point this because it all seemed to be sort of friendly suggestions. Is that, and Jeff got it to me really fast. The presentation from the Economic Editing Reduction Team was much appreciated. The report from the Economic Reduction Research and the paper I don't need commas there. Outline suggested next steps for implementing improvements related to edit reduction. The work and research that was done by the group was impressive with the ACES survey. The suggestions/recommendations outlined in the paper are reasonable next steps for implementing progress related to the research. Of these suggestions, changes to the questionnaires to reduce the data slides appears to be a simple change that will result in the greatest reduction of edits required. As stated in the presentation and report, data slide edits are by far the most common edits required. It is encouraged to, the census is encouraged to make these same types of proactive changes in the questionnaires to control the input for data fields that tend to have errors. As far as the edit process can we move to the front of the workflow, the better. Front-end control of input utilizing rule-based entry will reduce the editing required further along in the workflow. Okay? Big Data Working Group. The working group gave a report on its activities. The question is whether this working group will continue to exist. Recommendation. We recommend the continued existence of a CSAC Big Data Working Group. It interacts productively with the Census Bureau and provides external perspectives and expertise on census big data activity. It is also helpful in keeping CSAC informed about such activities. You okay? Happy? Okay.
Do you want, in the recommendations, to invite people who have been on it previously to continue?
That's already been approved,
Oh, okay.
that can happen. So I didn't think we needed to since it's not an issue. CSAC Working Group report. And I also showed this to Jack Levis, and he thought it was, oh, you're here. I thought maybe you'd gone away. CSAC Working Group report, it's what I showed you. This working group gave a report on its activities. There is a question of whether the scope of the working group should be modified. Many aspects of CSAC are now in the execution phase, so there are recommendations related to execution. Recommendations, the following things are to be done. I did that because the phrasing of this is a little different than the other recommendations. 1, validate that the learnings from the prototype have been properly transferred into execution, including completing, simulating, and evaluating insights. It is not clear whether this has happened, but it could be extremely important. To facilitate this, the people involved in the prototype should also be involved in the execution. 2, manage the scope through following change control procedures. 3, manage risk, including having a list of risks and contingency plans for each in case the risk becomes real. Evaluate and measure execution status, including consideration and tracking of earned value. 5, embrace change management. 6, modification of the scope of the working group in order to continue to be maximally helpful to the Census Bureau would be welcome. It's okay? Okay.
Barbara?
Yeah?
Something to the introduction. I have something that I forgot to.
Okay, I'm going back.
Okay. No, in the content test.
In the what?
The content test.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought we were going back.
I thought you
there.
were moving there already.
Okay, it doesn't say much now. What else do you want to say?
Yeah, so I would like, assuming other people agree, CSAC appreciates the careful analysis of the data collected as part of the 2015 NCT test on race ethnicity, and the detail of the data
Yes?
And the detailed material made available online. Because that report is really quite detailed.
Yeah, it's really
And I
great.
think we should say that. So if
that o-
everybody's okay with that, I'd
that
like to
okay?
add something. Yeah.
Recommendations. proceed with the combined question, but implement testing of whether order matters when using the internet. Design the internet version better. 3, integrate information on why this question is asked. 4, use 2017 tests to evaluate further potential mode effects. Continue to assess the political climate related to the MENA category. Use 2017 tests and follow up with local groups in areas where the test was conducted. This work should continue up to the point when the final questions have to be given to Congress. Post answers to likely frequently asked questions online. 7, keep in mind the relevance and value of asking parental place of birth in the ACS. Maybe we do this every year, maybe we'll have an effect. 8, the data should be available in some form to the research community. This would benefit the census. 9, continue work on bridging with past censuses and with vital statistics data.
This is Juan Pablo. I would suggest a small edit on the number 3.
Yes?
So I think beyond integrating information on why, I think we want to make that, to highlight that or make it visible.
I'm sorry, what do you want changed?
I think we want to highlight that or make it visible. So it's not just that it's integrated under help, because people are not going to go under help to find why, but it needs to be salient.
Out directly rather than just under help.
Yep.
Is that better?
Yeah.
This is Kathy. I would think we should specify what, and I don't know what the intention was about number 8.
That was that whole discussion.
Was it the link data? Is
with
it the
John about
bridge data? It's the,
how it's going to be available and what, and anything that can be done would be good.
Okay,
But it
so
was,
maybe,
well, from what John said, it's unclear, that John, I'm not picking on you, it's okay, that they'll probably or maybe going to do something, but they're not sure what, and I think we're trying to say whatever they can do is good.
well,
So
I
is
think
it
maybe,
the data related to
Kathy,
the.
maybe we should specify. Is that what you want? So
Well,
that,
it just seems like we should,
yeah, the
not all data
you know,
should,
the data linkages across censuses,
and related to the analysis about the change.
yeah, and related to the analysis about the change in the race ethnicity question.
Yeah.
As well as the the 2015 NCT content test data. I mean, there's a lot more, you know, yeah, because I think it would benefit the Bureau.
Is that okay?
Yes, I think that's helpful.
Is that okay now?
Yeah, I think that clarifies it. I think
Yeah.
that was a good question.
Okay.
Or maybe like recognizing privacy concerns. I think that was the other piece, so.
Well, they're going to do that anyway. I don't think we need to say that. Let's go back to the beginning to see what else I did wrong, okay? This worked last time. I think it's working this time.
Yeah.
Thank you also to the technology people from the census, without whom this would be essentially impossible.
Because also attention fades too.
Yeah, exactly, it's just sort of,
Don't remember.
Okay. I don't think I have to read the whole thing again, do I? Okay, why don't we take a 10-minute break and then quickly go through it again? Is that okay? We've gotten a lot done.
Barbara, just before we break, there are a couple of things in the census responses, very small things.
Okay, go ahead.
And it might be a good idea just to get it out of the way right now.
Okay.
One was, they promised that in this fall meeting, they would have a session on privacy. It's really an FYI. I think it's really important. Census contracted with a group known as Jason, probably spent a lot of money on trying to get some recommendations on privacy, and they came up empty. And so it's time for CSAC, I think, to put our collective heads together. That's the first thing. And then the second thing really is just a small agreement that another working group that I'm on, that you're on too, on reducing respondent burden in American Community Survey, I think it's run its course. And a couple of the other members feel it has too, and I'm not sure how you feel about it, but you might want to think about it. And
I think I talked to Bob about it, who's the
Right.
chair, and I think
Bob's the chair,
it's
right.
over.
Right. I just wanted to make sure that the rest of the group knew that we'd done our bit.
I wanted to say in defense of the Census Bureau, which I don't say things in defense of them very often, that the agenda was somewhat shorter than it might have been because they were very cooperative in trying to make sure we had enough time for discussion and for recommendations. I think that's one reason probably it's not on the agenda, but we certainly could put in a recommendation that there be a presentation and discussion of privacy at the next meeting.
Yes, so on the response, it basically said that they would not be ready for this spring
Oh, by
meeting,
now, okay, well, that's
but
another
they
reason.
would be ready for the fall. But, you know, memories get short, and just want
Right.
to make sure it's on the fall. I mean, I won't be here, but I think it's really important, and
Right.
And it's more of a note to you as chair than anybody, but to let the committee know as well.
Okay, just a second.
Kathy has pointed out that I could actually stay up late and watch you guys perform. It's all recorded, so I'll look forward to that.
Help me with the wording, Noel. We recommend that there be a presentation and discussion of what?
Yes, let me just go to the document. And more a reminder, I'm not quite sure we recommend, or we remind the census.
Well, what
We
was as
remind-
agreed to?
Yes,
earlier.
as agreed to.
Discussion of
Let's see.
privacy concerns and protections at the Census Bureau?
Privacy issues regarding published data was
Right.
what was in section 5.3 of our recommendations. But they're the words we use: privacy issues regarding published data.
As discussed in section 5.3?
In the Census Bureau's response to 5.3.
The Census Bureau response to the CSAC recommendations
5.3.
from the fall
2016 meeting, right.
meeting.
Just to quote for the rest of the people here, their response says, those studies will not be sufficiently advanced to report at the next CSAC, which is now, but a report could be scheduled, all right, so we're going to hold their feet to the fire, could be scheduled at the meeting after that. I think that would be important.
Okay.
To do
that. Is that okay?
And to put it in our recommendations.
Yes, Tommy?
One request from Tara to see a show of hands of people actually planning to take the bus. Anyone? One? Oh, she's counting. Thank you.
Ken's going to give Allison and me a ride back to the hotel because he's really nice.
So Barbara,
Yes?
Sunshine, Hillegas. I wasn't sure where this goes in, because in part it is potentially a recommendation, or also, a note of thanks. The response often includes references to material that is available by request or links to documents, and I really appreciate that John got a lot of detailed reports and material together that we could have here.
Right.
And so I just really want to encourage.
Yeah.
That both background material and reports that are relevant to the presentations, but also if there's material in responses to us, that material be made available at the meeting. Because I don't know, like everyone else, right, it was, kind of as I was getting ready for the meeting, I was like, oh, yeah, let me read what they actually, said is.
Well, I think we should express our appreciation
Yeah.
for the more timely provision of presentation materials, the greater availability of background materials, and the more efficient layout of the meetings to allow sufficient discussion is much appreciated. But also say that when background materials are not available ahead of time, if possible, make them available at the meeting. Is that okay? But I think they've done a great job.
Barbara, it's Noel here. Do we still get 10 minutes?
Yeah, you can go. I'll write this. Is that okay? Go away for 10 minutes.